Hi all, very good morning, afternoon and evening to all of you. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy lives and joining us for this webinar on data governance. Uh, I'm going to be your host today. My name is Swapnil Srivastav. I head the analytics practice for Evaluaserve globally and I'm based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Uh, Coming to the topic, right? Minimal data governance for maximum business results. Now today, we all know that majority of organizations have understood that data is important and data-driven insights are very powerful, right? I read in a recent survey that post-COVID, slightly more than 80% of CEOs have some kind of digital transformation initiative in place, up from 60% in the year 2018. Now, a big prerequisite for these initiatives to succeed is readily available, high quality, and relevant data. Yeah. So before running with these digital transformation initiatives, I feel companies should learn to walk, by making data governance a core competence within their organizations, right? Uh, but then what exactly is data governance, right? What are its elements? Is it only about quality? Is it the same as master data management? Then what exactly is metadata management, right? And does it include privacy and security, compliance, regulations? What exactly, do we need to start a data governance program from a process and technology perspective? Who owns data governance in an organization, right? So these are some of the questions that come to us from our clients and will be addressed by our guest speaker today. So allow me to welcome Dr. Prashant Sautikal. Um, he's based out of Calgary, Canada, and is a very renowned analytics educator and author and consultant. He's also a distinguished member of our advisory panel. And he's also written two books, which you can see on on the wall behind him. The first one was Data for Business Performance, and the second one, which got published recently, is called Analytics Best Practices, which I highly recommend to all you guys. So, without taking much time, over to you, Prashant.
Okay, Swapnil. Thank you very much for the nice and the warm introduction. So welcome everybody. I hope you guys are all staying safe. So today's topic, as Swapnil was talking about, is about data governance, and I'll talk about the 5 key principles which matter for minimal data governance to help you get maximum business results. And I'll tell you why I've chosen this title as well, so that you can understand the 5 important elements which really matter for good data governance. So as Swapnil was saying, I'm basically a consultant, author, and professor. I teach in 2 universities, at University of Calgary, where I am based, and at IE Business School in Madrid, Spain. As a consultant, I have worked as over 20 years as a consultant. I have worked for some big companies such as SAP, Shell, and Apple, and even some of the small companies which are about 15 to 20 employees as well, helping them in their analytics, data, and digital programs. As Swapnil mentioned, I have written 2 books. Both of them you can see behind: Data for Business Performance and Analytics Best Practices. I sit as an advisor for SAS Institute in Western Canada. Evaluaserve, of course, working closely with Swapnil and his sales and marketing team. And of course, a small company called Gruasoft, which is based in India, which is into basically master data cleansing. That's it about me. And so let's straight away get into the topic. As most of you would have seen about the challenges in becoming data driven. McKinsey did a study and they said almost like 2 hours, that is 25% of the time a user spends in just looking for data. So imagine companies these days are collecting and basically holding a lot of data, but they're not getting much value out of it. 90% of the data in a company is just kept and never used, which is very unfortunate given that a lot of time and effort and money is spent on data management. And if 90% of that initiative is not being used, it is very unfortunate. So how do we become data driven? So one of the things is about data governance, which is one of the core practices which I mentioned in my book, Analytics Best Practices, as data governance as the key enabler for realizing the best practices from analytics, or even for becoming a data-driven enterprise. So there is, when I talk to many leaders, managers, analysts, so many people in the industry as part of my consulting engagement, people have got varied expectations from data governance, and most of it is not getting much business results out of the data governance initiative. So some say, oh, it's a necessary evil. We have to do with this because of security and privacy aspect, which Swapnil just mentioned before the presentation. Some say it's working with the people from data governance is a kind of nuisance. We all, especially people who are mostly in the analytics world or the data science world, they say we want to go fast, but it's the security and the privacy and the data availability in the data warehouse which is actually preventing us to build that kind of momentum and speed. They say data governance. People say data governance is both bureaucratic. It takes a lot of procedures, processes, and so on and so forth. So overall, the current state of data governance in the industry today is not very positive. So you would have seen that Citigroup was recently fined for 400 million for data management as well. So having said all those things, what can companies do? What can business enterprises do to get most of the data governance programs? So before we go there, what is data governance? Basically, data governance is making sure that the right people are managing the right data in the right way. So it's in simple words, there could be many more definitions of data governance, but in simple plain English, this is what I call as the definition of data governance. MIT Sloan recently came up with an article on data governance, which is one of the great articles. You can Google and find out the latest one on data governance from MIT Sloan. They say it's a link between strategy and operations, or in other words, strategy and execution. So you have the operations team, which is working mainly on operations aspect, which is on compliance, which could be on analytics, whatever those initiatives are, which is all part of the execution, which is on the right side. And on the left side, you have the business strategy, which is, of course, tied to your data strategy as well. And governance is the link between strategy and execution. So data governance is the key element which makes sure that the strategy which you have are actually executed in the real world. So having said this, so what are the 5 key principles for optimum governance? How do you make sure that you get value out of your data programs? So there could be many things which you can talk as part of the data governance. So these are the 5 key elements or principles which I think are absolutely essential if you have to run your data governance programs. We'll go to each one of them quickly in detail. Let me just give you a quick overview about what are these 5 elements are. So it's all about best practices. It's about there could be 10 different things which you can do. But these are the 5 fundamental things which you need to make sure that you are actually working, your data governance programs are actually working out well. Let's go to the first one, which is about data utilization. So now every company says that, we are data driven. So in fact, Forbes came up with a recent article saying that every organization or every person in the business today is a data analyst or a data scientist, and every company is a data driven company. Whether you are a realtor or accountant or a banker or whatever it is, you always have to, you are part of a data driven enterprise. In fact, if you look at the companies which are having high market capitalization today, the top 5 companies known as FAA and MG, they are all related to the data processing area, like the Facebook, Amazon, Apple, the Google. The top 5 companies in are all the data management companies. In fact, you must be also knowing that the top 5 companies in market capitalization put together, their market capitalization is even more than just 2 countries in the world have the GDP, which is more than their market capitalization, which is US and China. So these companies are becoming really big and very powerful, given that the reason being data. So having said this, so every company would be saying, okay, data is our asset, which whether they implement it in the spirit or not, but at least everybody today is talking about it. But not many would be knowing that data has some limitations, and even worse, if not managed well, data can be a serious liability to the company. Prashant, hold on. Nobody has told me if data has liability and limitations. What is it you think you are saying about? Everybody so far whom I have met is always talking about data as an asset, but you are talking something like data has limitations and data is liability. Are we in the right call? Okay, let me quickly explain what does it mean data has some limitations before I get into the main aspect, which is you can transform your data into a business asset. When it comes to limitations, there are many limitations. I have written an article as well. In fact, my book, Data for Business Performance, has a separate chapter which talks about the limitations of data. The first thing is, or the important thing about limitations is data is normally obscured and it can be even biased. So the way you capture and collect data is based on how you want to capture it. So normally the data capture initiative has bias in it. Number two, data doesn't always translate into actions and results. Number three, relevancy of data is a function of time and space. Like, for example, I collect all my procurement data in China, for example. That procurement data is pretty much useless if I have to do some analytics in Canada. But what has happened? Because most often, that data which I have for China or India is not applicable to US and Canada because it is a function of time and space. And most of you know, too much of data can also cause analysis. So, okay, let's do this. So this process is never ending and it can go on forever and ever. And most of you would have seen this. Data has some limitations and it can cause analysis paralysis. Next important point. Most of the marketing people would be saying that, oh, we will help you do real-time analytics. But in my view, the word real-time analytics doesn't exist. It's oxymoron. Data always has a lag. There is a lag between the point of origination to the point of capture to the point of aggregation, whether it's a data warehouse, and ultimately to the point where insights are derived. So there is always a lag between the time the event actually happens to the time the insights are derived. So real-time analytics doesn't exist. And finally, data doesn't have any relevance for first-time events. Like, for example, quite a few of you would be hearing my webinar for the first time. So there is no data. You might be wondering, where is the data about this guy, Prashant? What does he do and all those things? You might go to LinkedIn and see who this Prashant is, but about the webinar itself, there is very little data that is available. So that happens most of the time. Like, for example, in Uber, when they went to the ride-sharing business, there was no data that was available for them to do the analysis and and understand whether they have to penetrate this market or not. So data has some limitations as well when it comes to business performance. Now, the next aspect, data has liability. That's an interesting thing. When I say data has liability, many people say, oh, that's very interesting. Tell me more about it. So data has liability on four main fronts. Number one, volume. Today, most of you know that 90% of the data that has been captured between the dawn of civilization to 2018 is less than the data that has been captured from 2018 onwards. So companies are capturing lots and lots of data. 90% of the data that they have today has been captured in the last 2 years. So what does this mean? The volume of data means huge data management costs for the companies. Companies are looking at many initiatives to reduce cost and serve the business, at least the IT teams. But actually, because of the volume of data that has been captured, the costs are actually going up. Number one. Next, number two, the cost of data storage. So all those things, when companies are taking data and storing it, it results in a huge amount of carbon footprint in the company. So today, data centers are almost 3% of the carbon footprint in the world is caused by data centers. And the rate at which things are, it's going to exceed 7 or 8%. Imagine everybody talks about carbon footprint related to industrialization, the transportation, and so on and so forth. But imagine 8% of the carbon footprint from the data centers. This is an amazing number. The way data centers are contributing to the carbon footprint of the world. And because of this, today companies are talking about ESG, environmental, social, and governance. So that's going to impact them a lot. And what does that actually mean? It's not a bunch of dashboards or metrics on ESG. That actually results in investment. If companies which are contributing more and more towards the carbon footprint, their investment capabilities are becoming less and less attractive for investors. Number three, security. With the more data which you have, you are more vulnerable for the hackers. So a lot of hackers would be looking at companies which have more data, like Capital One, Equifax, those companies. So even though you might have 90% of the data which is dark data, when the hackers come, they don't care whether it's dark data or bright data. They come and grab all the data which you have. So the more data you have, that means the more attractive you become for the hackers to attack your company. And finally, privacy. So, Cambridge Analytica came into the limelight because of data and analytics. And because they didn't manage the privacy aspects well, that was the element that brought them down. So while data can be a great asset, it can even result in your company being closed down if you don't manage well. So the data is extremely good if you manage it well. So now the thing is, the main question is, let's go to the extreme left side. Prashant, tell me, how can I make my data into an asset? You gave me a scary picture about the left two sides, but tell me, how do I make my data into an asset? So data is an asset under three main conditions. Number one, it should be valuable. What does this mean? It should be valuable. The data which you have in your company should be highly utilized for three main purposes. Think for a minute. Data which is there has only three utilities. Number one, is used in your business operations, whether it's giving a customer report or cutting a purchase order, whatever it is. It is for operations. Next, number two, for compliance. I need to provide this report for compliance to my regulators. So compliance is the second aspect when it comes to data being valuable. And the last thing is about providing insights or analytics. So I want to know, I have captured this million purchase orders for the last 3 years. I want to see whether there is any insights I could glean from this data points so that I can use it for my decision making and get more value out of my procurement spend. So number one, make sure that every data object that is being captured is tied to these three elements. You're not capturing data just for the fun of data capturing or just because the storage in the cloud is less. You should be capturing the data for these three reasons. Because if you just blindly go and capture the data, what would happen? You would be at a risk for security, for breakage, for hackers, for privacy, and everything. Number two, the data which you are capturing should not be easily available for your competitors. That means the data has to be read. How do you make sure that the data is read? Build it for your customer experience program, for your employee engagement, for your asset optimization, and all those things. And how do you make sure that this is happening? You need to transform your data from an unstructured or a native format to a structured format, because only if you make the data to a structured format, it becomes rare and it becomes very difficult for competition to take it and process it. Like, for example, syndicated data. Anybody can get it. If I want the syndicated data of all the dentists in Calgary, I can go ahead and get it. But at the same time, if that data is there for everybody, for instance, there is no competition. But it all depends on how I use that syndicated data for my customer experience, for my employee engagement, and for asset optimization. If I don't use it for these three purposes, so that means I'm not going very far in my data management journey. Finally, data should be non-substitutable. What is the substitute for data? When do you stop using data? The answer is intuition. If intuition is bigger than data, people will go to intuition and forget about data. And when does that happen? When the data literacy in the company is very poor. Education is one of the most important elements if you want to bring data literacy and data management in the company so that you become data driven. If people are not informed about data, about how to leverage data, how to take care of data, that means they would start getting into intuition and all the data which is there is blindly collected. Imagine today data collection is not a big deal. You have IoT sensors, you have mobility devices, you have so many ways of capturing data. So if you don't manage it well, you have tons and tons of data being captured and your cost will just shoot up. Of data management. So you need to be consciously managing your data. And one of the ways of consciously managing data is through education, is by improving the data literacy in the company. Gartner and McKinsey did a study, and the top two reasons why companies are challenged with enabling data for business performance is data governance and data literacy. These are the two aspects. It's not about technology. Technology comes at the end. Technology is later. It's all about the first aspects, about the value to the business, about your objectives, about the key questions which you are asking, so on and so forth. So this is the first thing which you need to do when you want to manage data as an asset. Next, number two, balancing data governance is always about cost, balancing cost and value. There is a price which you pay for everything, and that price which you pay has to be dependent on the value which you get. So let's take the simple example. In fact, it would have been great if there's animation working, but here it's we have a PDF file. So let's take the first image on the top left corner, quadrant one. If somebody were to ask about this, hey, what is this? They say, it looks like a building. Okay. Second image, it looks like a puppy or a bear, but I'm not very sure. It could be, I think I'm 60% confident that this is a puppy. Okay. What if the third image, which is on the third quadrant, the one with 16.3 KB of space? You say, Prashant, I'm pretty sure this is a puppy. I'm 95% sure this is a puppy. And when I show the fourth picture, you'll say, 100%, no doubt in that, this is a puppy. But it's always about, you can see the amount of storage. I've used a metric called storage as a factor for cost. So if you say 0% accuracy and the cost is very less, 1.3 KB. Whereas if you look at picture 3, it's kind of an optimal. So that means I'm going to get 95% accuracy for 16.3 KB of storage. And if I want to get 9 times more accuracy, which is a fourth image, I have to pay 100% more accuracy, 100% accuracy. I have to pay 9 times more cost than what is required for picture 3. So you had to strike a balance whether you want to stop at number 3 or number 4. Of course, you can go to number 4, no problem with this, but you should be ready to pay that price as well. How is it related to data governance? The related to data governance is most of the programs I have seen are trying to accomplish picture number 4. So what would happen in most businesses is picture number 3 is good enough. So only a few use cases are relevant for picture number 4. But we try to make it like a one size fits all. We want to look at the extreme situation for all the possible use cases, for example. So we want to look at situation 4. But imagine situation 4 takes 9 times more cost than situation 3. So that means companies get into this kind of a trap where they're trying to accomplish this situation 4, and on top of it, the companies are getting into mergers and acquisitions. The business processes are changing. The customer needs are changing. There is pandemic coming. All those things which are under your control or beyond your control. But this picture number 4 is impossible to achieve. So as they say, perfection is the opposite of getting things done. So perfection is the opposite of progression. Sorry, this applies very much to data governance. So you should be smart enough to see whether you want to stop at number 3 or number 2 also might be good, or if you are ready to take more risk. But in my view, in this image, number 3 is the most optimal. It gives the right kind of accuracy for the right amount of cost as well. So this is where you need to manage your cost and the value. And how do you do that? The main thing is you need to map your value chain. If you don't have your value chain in your company, that means you are always getting into this trap of looking at number 4, where you don't know where the end is. You assume that this is what the end is going to be. You are running behind it forever, which you never reach. The third thing about data governance is data first, governance later. In many projects I have seen, the governance, the procedure, the process, all those things takes more precedence than the data itself. People are discussing about protocols, procedures, policies, and all those things, but they forget the first thing they are doing is data here. Data comes before governance. Governance is important, don't get me wrong. But the important thing here is about data. You need to understand data first. Okay, Prashant, how do I understand data? What is this data all about? So generally, I classify data into 4 major types. Number 1, or let's start with at high level, into 2 major types. Number 1, the native state of data, and next number 2, the analytic state of data. If you look at the native state of data, this is a raw state of data where the businesses are actually capturing the data during the point of origination, which could be processing, which could be again broken down into structured and unstructured. Most of you know what the difference between structured and unstructured. Unstructured is always in the native format. Structured is making sure that the data which is there is suitable to your database. Integration, 3 major types: reference data, master data, transactional data. Reference data is about business categories. Master data is about business entities. Transactional data is about business events, which is a function of time. So when the data has been captured, you can classify every attribute in that data, whether it's a purchase order data, whether it's a point of sale data, whether it's a GL accounts, costing, whatever it is. You can classify every attribute in your screen into these three types of data. Finally, on the sensitivity type, data can be public data, like the data which is open to everybody. Like for example, if I want to know who is the CEO of eValueServe, for example, I can just Google it and I can find out. Confidential data, if I want to know how much money, what's the profit for a particular category my company is making, you will be able to see it only if you are authorized to see it, because it is confidential. It's not available to everybody. And lastly, it is restricted, which is basically legal data, which has got a function of security and so on and so forth. But this is the native state of data. This itself is of little value from the analytics point of view. You need to transform this data into an analytic state. And when you transform the data into analytic state, you can classify them into three major types: nominal, ordinal, and continuous. So Prashant, what is the fun in doing this classification? Why are we talking about this? Why do we need to do this transformation for analytics? The reason being, let's go back to the first principle. I said three main purposes of data: operations, compliance, and analytics. Operations and compliance is on the left side. Analytics is on the right side. And if I want to do analytics, I need to transform the data from the operations and compliance lens into the analytics lens. And to do analytics, I get these three types of data. So what? What do I do with these three types? Because data science models depend on two major elements. One is the data type, one of the three data types which you have. Next, number two, the questions which you are asking. Let's take a simple example. Linear regression. I want to know how much money I made in September of 2020. Prashant, this is a numeric value. So you go with multiple linear regression. Good. Now I change my question. I say, what is the money? Will I make a profit in November of 2020? Now you say, this question has changed from a numeric type to a probabilistic type. So this model which I'm going to apply now is going to be logistic regression. So the classifying the data type into nominal, ordinal, and continuous data type helps you to select the right statistical model so that you can apply in your data science. So in most of the times, you need to understand, okay, in the first principle, we talked about the three purposes of data. Now we need to know about the data, not just for the sake of data governance. The data has to be tied to the objective. And this is where I need to understand my data well so that I can run my data governance programs well. So how do I do this taxonomy? This whole aspects, the four things which I said. Three aspects on the native side, the first three: processing, integration, and security. The last thing is about analytics. There is one interesting quote which I have said, which I've listed here from the head of or one of the senior leaders in Google. Google is not better because they have better algorithms. Whatever Google has got, Amazon has got it. Whatever Amazon has got it, SaaS also has it. So the algorithms, everybody is the same. It is the data that makes a difference. That's my experience in all the companies as well. One of the best companies I have worked as a consultant is Shell. And the reason why Shell is good, because they have better data. It's not that they have better software. Everybody has the software. Shell can buy SAP, even other companies can also buy SAP. So that's not a big differentiator. It all depends on how well you manage your data. So if you don't know, if you have least understanding of your data, putting your processes, policies, everything becomes like an overhead. That comes back to the initial slide which I showed. Data governance is a necessary evil. It becomes a nuisance, and all those things get into the picture because you have not understood the data well. Data governance is on metadata and master data. It's not on transactional data. In many places I have seen, people are talking about managing data in the data warehouse, which is waste of time. You need to manage the data, either it has to be the metadata, which is all the technical attributes, the characteristics of the data, so on and so forth, or the master data, which is on the business entities. As I said before, from the integration point of view, you can look at the data into three major types: reference data, business categories, master data is about business entities, and transactional data is about business events. As an example, let's take a simple thing like a purchase order. What is the reference data in the purchase order? It's all about categories, such as your currency, plant, delivery priority, all those things which are categorized. Good. What is master data in a purchase order? Two major elements, or three, you can say it. It's about the vendor, it's about the material or services which you're going to procure, and finally the GL account where the spend is going to hit. So master data has got three key elements in the purchase order. Transactional data is all about a function of time. So what are the transactional elements in a purchase order? It could be the date. It could be the purchase order number itself. When you click on submit, the number gets generated. It could be the prices. It could be the exchange rates. All those things which are a function of time. This is all about transaction data. And the metadata is the one which binds all these three elements. Like, for example, the purchase order number, it has to be a 10-digit numeric number. The currency, it has to be a drop down based on the currencies which is there in this foreign key table. So I'm going to pull it from this foreign key. Transactional data, prices are always in USD. For example, I need to ensure that there is referential integrity between the prices and the exchange rates, so on and so forth. So all those elements are captured in the master data, which is basically about the data about the data. Master data, metadata is about the data about the data. Master data is about the business entities. So when you look at the master data management or data governance, so what are you doing? You don't have to manage your prices, and because they are a function of time, they're so volatile. So instead, you focus on some things which gives that kind of cardinality, which gives that kind of data integrity, which is master data and metadata. Focus on this. Don't focus on the transactional elements. So this is where master data management is crucial when it comes to data governance as well. If you get into managing transactional data, like many companies have seen, they try to manage the data governance in the data warehouse, and that is where they get labeled as being a nuisance, because it's very difficult to manage it and you are actually inhibiting your business performance, the speed in which the business wants to do. Instead, make sure that the data is there in the data warehouse is of good quality. So that's where you need master data and metadata to manage. So a simple data flow, if you look at the whole data lifecycle, right from data capture to integration to data science and visualization, I've taken a simple example. Of course, most companies don't work like this. They have hundreds and thousands of applications. But I've translated this into a very simple thing into four major types. One is your MDM system, where you have your single source of truth. Then you use your application AI systems, which could be your Dell Boomi, MuleSoft, whatever it is, and bring it to your transactional systems like your SAP, Ariba, whatever you have. And then use your RPA for external feeds, and then you do your ETL or ELT, whatever you want to call it, and bring it to the data warehouse. And then you apply your data visualization tool like the Power BI, Tableau, Spotfire, whatever the tools which you have in your company, or even Excel, into this data warehouse and start deriving insights. So if you look at data governance, which is on the top right, you need to manage the data governance on the MDM side, on the left side. So the higher it would be better if you come on the left side rather than trying to manage your data governance on the data warehouse. So as you know, there is a rule called 1:10:100. It takes $1 if you are proactive in managing your data, management, and $100 if you are reactive in your data management. So you have a choice here. Either you want to spend $1 and go all the left extreme and manage your data or metadata and master data on the MDM systems, or you want to spend $100, be reactive and always in a firefighting mode, and go extreme to the right and manage your data quality and everything in your data warehouse. So you have two options. You decide which one you want to do, whether you want to be proactive or reactive. You want to spend $100 or $1. Finally, principle number 5, data governance is about data sharing. It's about collaboration and shared goals. In many places I have seen when we start the MDM program, when we start about the data governance program, people say, oh, this is my data. I've been working on this for 20 years. Don't touch me, right? So don't touch me. I've been working on this. So data governance is about company first. It's not about you. It's about your team. It's about your organization. It's about sharing. We all work together. And how do you make sure that the data is shared? By running your data governance programs based on metadata and master data. If you run on transactional data, of course, people are concerned. Like I'm running a purchasing department, and my job is to make sure that the quality of the goods supplied by the vendors are good. Why should somebody interfere there? So that doesn't make sense. So instead, when you talk about data sharing, focus on master data and metadata. That helps so that everybody understands, okay, this is a shared entity which is there across everybody in the company. So how does it work? Data sharing is based on three major roles in a company. Number one, you need to identify who is the data owner of this particular data object. I've taken a simple example of a retail store master, which talks about three major elements here. Data custodians, which is from the IT, who are responsible for data security, backup, disaster recovery, ETL, data integration, and everything. Data owner is the one who is accountable for the data quality. And finally, data stewards, who are responsible for particular areas within the data set, like, for example, accounts payable, account receivable, operations, merchandising, marketing, so on and so forth. Each one is responsible for a set of attributes. Like, for example, credit is not responsible for finance related data or facilities related data. They take care of only those respective attributes which are related to this. But when all of them come together, they make the store master data complete. And who is accountable for it? It is the data owner, who happens to be from the business, not from IT. It's always the business which is responsible for the data quality. In many places, like, for example, a few weeks back, I met a friend and he says, "Hey, Prashant, these days I see you are pretty active in LinkedIn, talking a lot about data and analytics and everything." And he was an engineer in an oil company. I said, "It's good. How do you like my articles?" So he said, no, that's all IT related stuff. I'm the business. I don't care about data and everything. That is wrong. Today, data is everybody's responsible. Whether you are a realtor or accountant or a banker or a physician or a school teacher, it's responsible. It's data. Data touches everybody. Like I do an analytics training course every quarter, which is called Analytics Masterclass. Apart from teaching at UFC and IE, and one of the teachers, one of the participants there was actually a physician. And she said, "Prashant, at the end of the course, whatever you teach, this is exactly the work which you do as a physician. I do exactly the regression. I do all this data analysis, exploratory stuff, t-test, and all those things I do as part of this work." So it was a great refresher. You taught about all those things. So it's not about data, is not about IT. It's about business. It's about data sharing. So five key takeaways. So as I said, data governance doesn't have to be a big bang or a bureaucratic approach. It's not a one size fits all. You need to make sure that it is working for your respective companies. Number two, it depends on your business strategy. And of course, your business strategy is tied to your data strategy. Companies such as healthcare, oil and gas are very much regulatory centric. For them, the data strategy is very different from companies such as media or retail, which are pretty much very aggressive. When I say aggressive, when it comes to leveraging data. So the data strategy for an oil and gas company is very different from a data strategy for a retail company. You can't say that, "Oh, Amazon did it, let me also do this in my company." It doesn't work, right? Like all those articles about Amazon, Facebook are good when you are sitting in a flight and reading those articles. But the reality when you come to work is completely different. You need some kind of expertise. You need to understand the industry. You need to understand your business. It all depends on the data strategy. In data governance, data comes before governance. Governance is a means to help you become data driven. It's linking strategy and operations. And finally, data governance, just like any other initiative, is about leadership. It's about helping others succeed. It's not about you. It's about a bigger picture. It's about others. Leadership is always about others. So it's making sure that it's about helping others succeed, helping the companies succeed. So I was in an SAP transformation project in a utilities company. So we had in that meeting, we had people from finance, HR, procurement, safety, all those people. And in that, almost like 20 people in a huge room. And everybody was talking about their own interest. So I just told I was enterprise architect for that project. I just told in this thing, we have every department represented in this company from this company X. Let's call this company as X. We have procurement, we have HR, everybody represented in this room. But we don't have a single person from this company X. So its leadership is all about your company. You come next. It's about organization, and your team comes before you. So again, data management is all about how you effectively manage your resources. So this is one good picture which I have. You might have a lot of data, but if it is not effectively used well, so you'll always feel shortage. You'll always feel it's never enough. I need more and more, and you keep on spending and spending. So most of the companies, in my experience, have good data. It all depends on how to find it, and that's where expertise matters a lot. It's not that everybody can do everything. Say, for example, if I have to win Wimbledon tomorrow, I'll hire Roger Federer. I'll not go and play Wimbledon because I can hold a racket. Okay. So, and I've written an article in Forbes about illuminating dark data in enterprises. So, if you can go to Google it, and you will reach this article. So it's a good one about how to leverage, how to ensure that you don't get into this trap of capturing more and more data and end up having a lot of dark data in the company. So there is 2 books, as Swapnil was talking about, which I've written. So you can go to my publisher's site and put these 2 quotes. If you're interested in data for business performance, which is the left side, you put DFBB25. And if you're interested in analytics best practices, you can put ABP25. I'll pause for 5 seconds. If you want to turn on your camera and take a screen picture of this image, so that you can go to my publisher site and give it. And if you're in Calgary, if anybody is in Calgary and if they need the copy of the book, and they can save some shipping costs by reaching out to me directly, and we can figure out a place to meet. So this is my last slide. So it all depends on, I worked in GE before I started my own company, DBP. And Jack Welch, when I was there in 2004, and so he was a CEO at that time, and this is what one of his favorite quotes, which I like a lot. It's not about data. It's not about insights. It's all about converting these insights into business performance, which he calls it as competitive advantage. So data is an enabler. It's a means to an end. So the end is helping your business succeed. So that's concludes my talk. So I'm glad to answer any questions. I think Swapnil would have compiled a list of questions. I believe I saw a couple of them already floating. So we have 15 minutes time.
Yeah, Prashant, there are a lot of questions coming on the chat. Let me share with you the first one. So, classic problem in enterprise is ownership of data, right? Different departments such as finance, sales, marketing own their own systems and respective data. They work in silos, introducing challenges. What is your recommendation to handle data ownership issues in enterprises?
Okay, great question. So, the good thing about the scientific management is it brought efficiencies in companies. So with the decentralization and categorizing work, finance, procurement, safety, and all those things. But the bad thing about the scientific management is, while it created specialization and focus, efficiency, siloed. The bad thing is it created silos, organization silos, data silos, and everything. As they say, the whole is less than the sum of the individual parts. That's Aristotle's quote. So that applies today very much in the data-centric world. So you don't win this battle overnight. It has to be a long drawn battle. This is where companies such as GE and Shell have a great advantage, because most of their initiatives are kind of a top down, and that top down in the data management world translates into master data management. So when I was in Procter and Gamble, so all the master data entities, whether it's vendors, items, customers, GL accounts, cost centers, profit centers, was managed by one central master data company, and it was distributed to 70 odd transactional systems. So one way of transforming this is leave finance, split the data which finance has got into master data and transactional data, and allow finance to run their transactional data, but take the master data ownership from their part of it and make it enterprise-wide. This is one way of doing it. Like, for example, procurement. If you go and say procurement, give all your purchase order data, give all your service entry sheets and all those things, it's never ending. You don't win that battle, because you are actually inhibiting this process of enabling procurement to be successful. Instead, you say, procurement, I will give you what you need to cut a purchase order. You need 3 master data elements: items, vendors, and GL accounts. I will manage it, because it's not just you who need those things. Safety also needs it. Finance also needs it. Marketing potentially needs it as well. So I will manage all those things, and I'll give it to all of them. You manage just your procurement process. So this is where I would split this work between finance and corporate, for instance, and manage it. It's not a simple thing to say, but it's a long. You can't eat an elephant in one bite. You have to break it into multiple bites.
Thanks, Prashant. So the next question is, what is the best way to start a data governance program? What tools, artifacts, software, or techniques would you recommend for discovering, documenting, and communicating your data value chains?
Okay. So the first thing is, as you said, it all starts with people. People first, process later, and technology is the last. Data. So you need to understand how people are using your data for their business activities. If people are not onboarding your into your process, there is very little you can do about your any program, not just about analytics program, any program for that matter. You need to first thing is about people. People have to be onboarded for the scene. That's why education and data literacy is very important. And we have this webinar itself from Evalu Service is a part of that to help companies understand more about data governance and build the data literacy in the company. That's the first thing. Data value chain. If you are a big company, there are so sophisticated tools. Big consulting companies, including EvalueServe, are experts in this. They bring their own proprietary methodologies, tools, and everything into the process. Or it could be even as simple as spreadsheets, right? Like if you look at SAP, for instance, they have a model called Eris, which is embedded on top of your ERP application, where you can do all your business processes and it's integrated to your SAP. So there's a lot of tools which are available in the market. It depends on your business process. It depends on your industry type and everything. But the value chain again, you need to again it's striking a balance between cost and value. Where do you want to stop? Like some companies stop at level 2. Some companies go up all the way to level 6 or 7. You can even go to level 10 if you want. But you should also look at the value of all these exercises as well. There has to be a balance between cost and value, even when it comes to value chain. That's where these expert companies, the services companies such as Accenture, Deloitte, EvalueServe, all come into the picture.
Got it. The next question is data governance relevant only for large organizations?
Oh, so this is an excellent question. So the answer is no. Today, every company is a data-driven company. Whether you are a small company, whether you are, as I said before, whether you are in the real estate industry, whether you are in the education, whether you are transportation, whether you're in the oil and gas, whether you're in healthcare, everybody is looking at data management as a fundamental enabler of business performance. IDC did a study, and they said by 2025, 50% of the world's GDP is going to be based on data-related products and services. So imagine 50% is going to be data-related product and services. So we are just scratching the surfaces. So in the next 5 years, things are going to dramatically change. So data is going to be a huge enabler for business performance. It's not for the big companies of the world, like the Shells and the Walmarts, but even for every small company can leverage it. So I don't agree that data governance is going to be for only for the big companies. Even for small companies, for instance, why do you want to waste money if you can reduce your cost of data management by 70% by capturing data unnecessarily? So data governance has to be looked from. So when you look at the dark data itself, if you don't have data governance, let me put it this way: if you don't have data governance, you will have dark data. That's all. You'll have the chance of having dark data is more.
Okay, there's one more question which has come up. Just give me 1 second. In your opinion, should a dedicated analytics department provide reports to business, or should the end users be creating their own reports?
I would go with the self-serve analytics mode. That's my preference. I would enable the business as much as possible to go for the self-serve analytics mode. Of course, there are some cases where the business team might not be competent enough to create those things. They might not have the time and all those things. So in that case, you could have an analytics team to support as well. But it would be self-serve analytics, I think, is the way to go forward if you want to enable the business to get value out of the data. So putting a centralized team, it has to be. I would go with more like a chief data officer's office whose responsibility is to make sure that there is good quality data in your canonical system. For lack of a better word, let's call it as data warehouse. So your chief data officer's responsibility to make sure that the data there is timely data, there is accurate data, there is secure data, everything is there in your data warehouse, and enable the business team to manage it, to manage the reporting itself.
Okay.
Exceptions are always there, but this could be the direction companies can strive for.
One more interesting question, Prashant. So companies that are in business for many, many years have legacy business systems, and so data is running on mainframe systems. What would be your recommendation as a starting point for such companies to make meaningful use of legacy data together with current data from newer systems?
Okay. So the person who has asked is a great question, but I would ask a question to him again. So, what would be the half-life of data when it comes to analytics? Just think, half-life of data when it comes to analytics. That means you have a data set. In how many hours or days or months do you think the value of the data reduces by 50%? Nucleus Research did a study, and they say, believe it or not, it's 8 hours. So when you talk about, like, for example, if I want to do a purchasing spend for 2017, for instance, it is meaningless in today's world, given that the half-life of data is just 8 hours. So when you talk about legacy data, one thing is, why do you want to talk? I'm assuming that you're saying with legacy data, you're talking about historical data, which is there for the last 15, 20 years, for example. So in today's world, it doesn't make any sense. So, 8 hours might be a little bit ambitious. They have given a range, but I've just taken the weighted average and made it like 8 hours. But even if you take, for example, if I give you an insight today and say this insight is 6 months old, for example, it doesn't matter anything for you. On the other hand, I give you an insight today and say this is based on the data which was yesterday's data. That's more useful for you. So the legacy, for example, timeliness. As I said before, the limitation of data, timeliness is an important attribute when it comes to data quality. So you need to make sure that whether it's legacy data or the current data, you need to factor the timeliness aspect of data more than whether branding it as legacy or new system. So did I answer that question, Swapnil?
Yeah. One last question in the interest of time, Prashant. What is the business value of data governance?
Okay, so let me put it in this way. I mentioned a lot of things about data today. The business value of data governance is, number one, is reduce cost and improve compliance. If you don't do data governance, data has to be consciously managed. It is not a natural resource. If you want to transform the data into an asset, not just allow a system to just capture data, because it will just explode. And when the data capturing mechanism just explode, your cost goes up and your compliance aspects are at a huge risk. So if you don't do your data governance activities, your cost will go up, your compliance to security and privacy is jeopardized. So these are the two value of data governance. In other words, you will end up with more and more data. That means almost like 90% of your data would be practically useless for you. And for that useless data, you will be spending a lot of time in managing your business, a lot of costs in managing the business, and it will be a risk for you to manage that data as well.
Prashant, we have 2 minutes left, so let's accommodate one more question. Says, understand your recommendation is not to bring all data into data warehouse, but rather bring only metadata. Why are companies investing in data lakes?
This is a political question as well. Why are companies investing in data lakes? So the data lakes, the characteristics of, in my view, the difference between the two canonical databases which we have, the data warehouse and the data lake. So the difference between them is, if you're looking at more and more unstructured data, and if your process is ETL, not if ELT, not ETL, then you go for data lakes. And if it is more about structured data, which is ETL related, you go for a data warehouse. So the case for data lake is use case driven. You need to find out what is my use case to go for a data lake, not just because somebody is talking about data lakes. That's why you need good advisory team to help you find the right technology. Not just because, oh, okay, Facebook is talking about data lake, and let me also do data lake in my company. It might not suit you. You need to adapt something which is suitable for your company. In my course, for instance, whether at UFC or IE or even the books which I've written, I have written in a prescriptive way so that I don't want to rewrite what Amazon did, what Facebook did. So I want to write a story about what I found in these companies, small, medium, and large enterprises, what has worked and what has not worked. So just because somebody talks about a shiny object called data lake, it doesn't mean that you need to go for it. You need to find the respective use cases which are applicable to you. Data lake has its own use cases, own advantage. Data warehouse has its own use cases, own advantage. In many cases, a lot of things can be achieved with small data instead of big data as well. So why companies are going for data lake, I don't know. But for you, what I would say is whether you want to go for a data lake or a data warehouse, you need to find what is the use case for going for that. Use case is the one that's going to determine which technology you're going to adopt.
Okay. I think we are at 12:30 now. So I would like to thank all of you who attended the webinar. Thank you, Prashant, for a wonderful presentation and answering all the questions. But all you guys, if you have any other questions for us, for Ivadu sir or for Prashant, please reach out to us through LinkedIn, through our website. Prashant's email is mentioned here. And have a very good day and good night to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, everybody. See you and take care. Stay safe.